make my microphone work because now it's only on this. So
Oh,
hey, you know what? If I got to do normal audio with just my good old MacBook, I just promise you, I sound a lot better with my actual microphones. Let's see if it recognizes this.
well, this is the bottom line. No one's going to hold us down. We're getting through this today.
Yeah, totally. All right. Yeah, it's for whatever reason why it won't pick up my mic and it won't pick up my external camera. So we'll do this. We will just turn this off and here we go.
We're going to go 2019 here.
That's right, baby. It's
I
all
love
good.
it. Hey, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Happy to be here with you, man. And just go wherever we go with this conversation. Explore whatever you want to explore.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do first and foremost, since we talked about things like unexpectedly getting in the way of things, how did you survive COVID the last 3 years? How did you get through it? And how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Yeah, COVID was quite a learning, obviously, for everybody, for goodness sakes. I would say for myself, being a traveler, so I travel a ton for work, it was disruptive to say the least. But in my corporate experience, I'm on a plane almost every week. So besides having to wear a mask, of course, and deal with all of those things, it didn't stop my travel. It didn't define me. It didn't define my business. What I do in a corporate space with managing restaurants, we have people on the front lines, obviously, who had to still serve food. So for me, it was very much being out there with everybody, of course, and showing a presence that your leadership is out there with you versus being tucked away in an office. And of course, take your precautions, be smart, be safe. But I think it's important to be, walk the talk. And if our folks are out there working in the restaurants, then I will be there alongside with them. Now, in the podcasting world and the things that I do here in this space, of course, you had some more time. I didn't travel quite as much, but was out there still. So it was a chance to reset, pause, reflect, and get some ideas out there with perspective and learning, and began to do more work in the podcast space and released my book during COVID as well in February of 2022, wrote most of it in 21. So it was being very active still with my team, but also taking pause and stepping back. And I think in all things you learn from things. You learn to stay calm. You learn to not have knee-jerk reactions. You learn to not judge. Everybody has their own place and space, quite frankly, for what their own beliefs are. And Lord knows how hyperbolic and hyperpolarized everything was. So for me, it was really save space, give pause, learn, reflect, how to be more of a better human being for myself and for my team versus all the other crazy things that we saw happening. I think it's important to show calm and some cool-headedness in times of unease, because when people are looking at others, they want to see their leaders do that as well too. So that's what it was for me.
So you're juggling a lot of things in your existence, and I'm curious, if I put you in front of a bunch of third graders and one of the kids looks up at you and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Yeah, I'm a leader, I'm a teacher, and I'm a coach. So while my job, really my paycheck, comes from leading around 400 restaurants, I don't do that myself. I have a great team that I coach, teach, counsel, help paint the picture through a corporate strategy of what our initiatives are. So I get to be the person that thinks about how we're going to go attack our business, how we're going to go be successful. And in that space, we have a great team around me that helps put all those cogs in the wheel into motion and basically says, here's what we're going to go do to drive success. We're going to take care of people. We're going to have our restaurant staff. We're going to train. We're going to make sure that we improve on key metrics. But through all the base means, it's by making sure we take care of people. So every business says people first. But I think in my world, we do our best to really back that up and embody it. So it's about coaching people, how to have others learn how to take care of their team so that they can hit company objectives and do all the things and make the wheels go round. So that's really what I am. I'm a teacher, coach, and a counselor of business and life. And then the flip side of it is that whole life side, which I just love. I'm a big lifelong learner and somebody who never stops learning and always has to ask the big questions about life. And I don't mind putting out those questions and trying to have some good conversation around what it is. So that's just it. I'm a lifelong learner, which makes it easier to be a coach, because as you're learning through experience, your experience becomes your truth. And while truth isn't the same for everybody, it helps build credibility whenever you're living and walking the talk and trying to help others do that same thing too. So that may not be the best description for a third grader, but it's my best attempt at trying to explain what it is that I do.
Oh, no, I think they'll walk away with a good understanding. So let's flip this around. You're in the third grade. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Great question. I am definitely not in the role that I thought I would be. In third grade, I would have told you I wanted to be what I called a rock cutter. Now, I didn't know what the hell archaeologist meant. So somewhere I had this fascination with digging and getting into the earth and trying to dig up history and find out what things meant. Where and why that would come to me as a third grader, but I remember vividly telling my then school teachers and my mother what I wanted to be when I grew up, and it would have been an archaeologist. I just didn't know the name for it back then, and I guess I can kind of tie that back to somewhere deep inside of me. I had this learning for knowledge, this yearning for understanding more of history and how we've become who we are today, and that fascination kind of blended into meteorology and the study of weather. I love science, so as I got older, past the third grade, started to get fascinated with all things science and weather and what makes storms and tornadoes and hurricanes. So that's where I was spending my time in school, thinking I would do that, which was a very different path from where I was to now where I'm at today.
So who was a hero for you? Who kind of fueled you and your vision and desires in life?
Actually, Jim Cantori. If you're going to talk about a hero, I don't know if he'd be a hero for me, but I grew up probably coming of age as a teenager as the Weather Channel was becoming a thing. Who would think 24/7 weather would be something that people would want to watch? But in the late 90s, probably mid 90s, early 90s, that became a thing. And I remember thinking how cool it was for him to be out there reporting on the weather. Now, I didn't want to be on TV as a TV weather personality, but I admired him for putting himself in the middle of the storm and always having that in this be in the trenches, right? And being out there reporting. So I think as a celebrity, if you will, which I'm not somebody today who's very fascinated by the shock and awe of celebrities, but as a young adolescent, Jim Cantori was someone that I looked at because I love the weather. Outside of that, of course, I had sports figures and folks that I would look up to. But as I began to work and actually get a W-2 and a paycheck, I had a lot of folks in the business that became true mentors, true heroes that put their arm around me and helped teach me, because I come from a very little amount of things in life. I had quite the storied background and didn't have the most growing up, was very underprivileged, mother of two, divorced, trying to figure out a way to make ends meet. And all I wanted to do was make sure I wasn't in that situation. So I worked hard and got into an entry-level minimum wage position where a general manager that didn't know me from Adam just saw something. And I showed up every day. I worked hard. And the next thing you knew, it was, hey, do you want to be a shift manager? And here's $2 more an hour. So money was a big motivator for a while, but somebody saw something in me in a time in my life that was a very rough spot for me and put that arm around me and gave me a chance. And it led me into this corporate structure hierarchy that I'm in now, 25 years later. So really, that's the personal, I guess, celebrity aspect. Look at me. Yeah, who would have thought? I don't know how many people love Jim Cantori as a model, but he was my first celebrity role model. And then, of course, the restaurant leadership that I gotten to know really helped me as well to piece it all together.
I love that viral video when he just gets gangster. There was someone that was in his way. I don't know if you ever seen
Yeah, that is a classic one. He just like pushes him away from him.
Totally. Like, yeah, strong arm like he was a football player.
Yeah.
There was so I do a lot of jazz radio, and there was a guy that I interviewed at one point. I've interviewed him a few times. His name is Lenny Marcus, and I was trying to get kind of the essence of what he does. He was the guy that did the music for the Weather Channel, like the little interludes. It was him. And I was like, dude, that's not an ideal place probably for any musician, but you got to imagine the royalties probably pretty good, and the audience that you're getting to, it's pretty big.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Especially as it's become the behemoth that it is now. If you want to know what the weather is, you turn on, whether it's local on the 8s, that became a thing at some point. I think it was the first time that you could see like every 10 minutes what the weather was going to be prior to the internet and prior to having your phones. And then we can now just pull up apps. Times they move quickly. But yeah, it's definitely was an interesting starting off point, and whoever can get into it and had all the eyes and ears on it, I'm sure they did quite well.
Absolutely. So, what is the ultimate motivator for you for everything that you do and all the things that you want to get done and be? What is the motivation? What gets you out of bed and gets you through the day?
Also, a great question tied into just who I am and why I'm wired the way that I am. I have a undying desire to figure out how to best live one's life and how this thing called life works. And again, it stems back to my big question thinking: who are we? What are we? Why are we here? What happens before? What happens after? How does life really work? Did the ancient Egyptians have it right over the Western philosophy? And what philosophy is right? And is there even a right philosophy? And what defines right or truth? So what motivates me is to really become the best version of myself possible through all the learning, all the opportunities to lead with example, finding a way to exude that for others. Because I think my main goal, as meta as this sounds, is to help humankind evolve consciously. And that begins with us. So whether it's in business, whether it's in life, I think that the biggest takeaway for me to answer that question is: how do we become better as a civilization, and really look at all the challenges we have in life and say, why do these exist? And how do we solve for it? Because if we're going to continue on as a species and reach higher levels of existence, like you might see in Star Trek or whatever it might be that sounds utopian, I don't think it has to be that way. And of course, challenges will always exist. So whenever someone says, well, how do you enact change? It sounds very, very cliche, but it is one person at a time. Conscious evolution and improving oneself can only begin with turning within and focusing on yourself. And then the people that you influence notice that too. And then they feel more comfortable being in their own skin. And it's less ego and less, hey, come join my tribe. My tribe's right, your tribe's wrong. You just live authentically as yourself. So that's my big desire throughout life every day, to wake up to do that to the best of my ability and help others figure out what that means to them as well too.
So, let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 20-year-old version of yourself, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life. What would you tell your young version?
Slow down, pause, realize that status and label is man-made creations. Certainly we need to have money to function in life, and I'm all for passion and drive, but I made myself sick at a younger age in my 20s with trying to work too much, too fast, too hard, and carried that chip on my shoulder as being a high school dropout and somebody who had to prove himself underneath what society's labels decides success looks like. And I was very driven by the almighty dollar for a while, and have since realized that, hey, if you can meet some base essentials and base needs and you have enough, then life really begins to open up. So I thankfully did learn that at a young enough age, probably in my early 30s. I'm now 42. And I don't define life as materialistic status, money, and labels, but I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress that was very much self-induced from the grind, the constant struggle, work, 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 work. And I had 8 great years in Tampa, Florida that I don't even really remember because all I did was work. So I lived in Florida for 8 years, and where I kind of started my entire career off, and couldn't really enjoy it because it was just work. And I think that while we have to have goals and we have to shoot for the stars and have big dreams, you got to know when to pause, slow down, reflect, and understand if you already have it good, what are you chasing? And easy at a young age because you're trying to prove yourself. But for some people, that never, ever stops. So
Yeah.
that's what I tell myself.
So, what are you the proudest of that you've done so far?
I would say probably being with my wife. I didn't think I'd be married. I'm proud of a lot of things, and it could be easy to say my status and my title and the income that I've been able to generate, the leadership I've been able to accomplish. But I've been married now for almost 20 years, together for 25 years, and high school sweethearts. Not the same high school. I was the other school across the tracks. We'll just say that, and she was from that more, I guess, well affluent area. And the fact that we even met in the first place at work is quite an amazing story. And the fact that we stayed together is far more amazing. And what I've put her through throughout my life of moving up and down the East Coast, from Pittsburgh to Tampa to Philly to Ohio and points all in between, and all the idiotic mistakes that I made, if you can say that there is a soulmate out there or a reason for being for our relationship, she is definitely my pillar, and something that I'm most proud of to say that in today's generation, people don't usually meet in high school and stay together for 20 plus years, let alone 5 or 10 years. So I have a lot that I'm proud of, but I'll put that at the pinnacle of all the accomplishments because she had many reasons to leave me.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That is a very interesting question, and I'm going to give you probably a very interesting answer because
Yeah.
of who I am. I try hard to remove all the labels of Ken Hannaman, division vice president, author, writer, podcast host. All those things define me as what this life is as Ken Hannaman, but I believe that I'm a consciousness, I'm a soul embodying this human experience that we call life. So when I define myself as individual, yet also a collective. So I am very much a believer of the human consciousness as a collective consciousness. So I'm very much trying to, again, work with people that I vibe with, that I don't vibe with, that just more or less see different perspectives. I think that for us to grow, we have to see and have conversations about differing points of view. We don't have to always agree, but I am a lifelong learner. I am a teacher and a student of life. And for the human sake of the conversation, yes, I have a name and I have these titles and I have this place in history, but it's just a place in history. And I'm trying to figure out this thing called life like everybody else is. And it's very different for me in terms of what those answers are. Because if you had asked me that question 10 years ago, I'd have given you all that. Here's my title, my name, and what I do. That is how I function in this life, but it does not define me. If you can make that statement of I am in the world, but not of it, that's probably the best way to sum it up is I am here doing things, but I also think about the spiritual, non-physical side, the higher meta side of life too, that quantum mechanics and quantum physics is trying to prove that it does exist, even though we can't see, feel, taste, touch, and all those physical senses. So that's a longer answer probably for a simpler question, but that's the only answer I can give.
It's always the one that brings out the PhD dissertation. It's good because it is the essence. So Ken, if anyone out there wants more podcast, book, anything more about your life, where do they go? How do they find out?
Best place is ungraduated.com. And while it's not my corporate world, because I do a lot with the restaurant space, you can get a hold of me there. But it's where I have my writing, I have my book, the podcast, all things that are really who I am as an individual and a leader and a coach. So ungraduated.com, UNGRADUATED. It's a made up word, but it had the domain available. It was one word. It defines my brand of stepping outside of the box and looking at other things from a programmed perspective of what's right, what serves you, what doesn't serve you. That's the book. That's the podcast. Ungraduated.com is the best place to go.
I love it. Ken, hey, thank you, man. We got through it. Everything's good. We got the mic and the cameras. We're good. So great to meet you, man. Thanks for taking your time out. It's a wonderful story.
Happy to be here with you, Joe, and I hope it serves you and the audience well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great day, man.
You too, man. Thanks.
Take care.